I think the one key takeaway from Mark's talk is the transition to a low carbon system is clearly underway. It really is a matter of when, not a problem of how. So it's really, yeah, exactly. So it's not it's a problem of how, not a matter of when. So tonight, the how will be the focus of a series of our speakers. And we really have a stellar lineup for you guys. They are researchers, they are academics, they are entrepreneurs, they are industry veterans. We also have visionaries sitting here waiting to share their insight with us. And their expertise span across a variety of different topics, whether it's energy access in the developing world, or incorporating more renewable energy into our existing grid, and how can we do that in the most economically efficient way. So let's get started. I'd like to introduce Zach, but before I do that, I'd like all of us to ponder on one question. Is it possible for us to ever have too much renewable on the grid? And that's something that Zach will share some of his thoughts with us today. Zach is a senior consultant at E3. E3 is a San Francisco-based consulting company. And Zach leads the development of energy models for utilities, for regulators, and also industry groups. Zach is a good friend of mine, and we went to school together at Stanford. And if anything, I can say that he's a true believer of the market. So without further ado, Zachary Ming.
There we go. Okay, so I'm talking about the future of fossil generation. So California today is about 50% fossil fuels in our electricity sector, 50% carbon-free. Of the carbon-free resources that we have, about half of those come from renewable energy. And there's a lot of talk about transitioning, increasing to 100% renewable energy. Mark Jacobson, a professor at Stanford, has written several papers on the topic, and recently in Sacramento, in the legislative session, there was talk about a bill of 100% renewable energy. Didn't pass, but it's on the horizon. So what are the technical challenges of 100%? Well, let's start with a little bit about how the grid works. We know that electricity demand changes all the time. It increases as people wake up and turn on their stuff, and goes down as they go to bed. Historically, we've met this changing demand by turning power plants on and off. And that's worked pretty well, but we're now entering a new paradigm, renewable energy. Unfortunately, renewables don't turn on and off when we want them to. They turn on and off when the sun is shining. As you can see, this doesn't exactly line up with when we use electricity. So if we want to make this system work, we have to take the excess solar that we have in the middle of the day, put it in a battery, and then use it later in the evening when we don't have electricity. So this works pretty well when it's a sunny day, when the sun is shining, or conversely when the wind is blowing. But what happens when we don't have a sunny day, when we have these in the electricity sector, what we call contingency events? In a high renewable world, a contingency event is a cloudy day. Here, we don't have enough sunlight to store. So we have a couple options. We could either keep a essentially shadow fleet of fossil fuel generators around and turn those on during the few days a year we need them. So we have them, but we use them very sparingly. Or the alternative is we keep a shadow fleet of batteries around and use those instead. And those batteries would be charged during the sunny months, the sunny days, and we use those batteries instead of fossil fuel when we need to. The question is, if we want to go 100% and use batteries, how many batteries do we need? Not only for when you have a cloudy day, but when you have 2, 3 cloudy days in a row. Well, let's start with how many batteries we have in California. We have about 2 gigawatt hours. We've spent about $500 million on those 2 gigawatt hours. And we are on track to meet what most people would consider to be sort of the world-leading storage target of 8 gigawatt hours by 2020. So the question is, and with cost declines, we will have spent about $1 billion. So how many batteries do we need to get to 100% renewable energy? Well, we need approximately 2,000 gigawatt hours to meet, under a pretty conservative scenario, 100% renewable energy. Even with very large cost declines, this will probably cost about $200 billion. To put that into context, we spend about $30 billion a year on electricity in California. If we were to install one fossil plant, we could remove 200 gigawatt hours of these, saving ourselves $20 billion. and that would be about 1%, that would be 99% renewable energy, 1% fossil energy. So this is a question for, is this, what should our target be? Every additional fossil plant we add yields fewer battery savings. There are diminishing returns, and that's how we see a massive cost increase. Now, this is some preliminary analysis we've been working on at E3. There's a lot of factors that go into this. I'll just put some pictures here of some of these, but a lot of this depends on how connected we are to our neighbors from transmission and geography, what the mix of wind versus solar is, how cheap batteries get, and what we do as far as electrification and what our electric loads grow to. So the question is, we know that as we decarbonize, costs increase exponentially. Decarbonizing is a noble goal, and 100% is a noble goal, but we need to be aggressive but fully understand the cost ramifications of our decisions. Thank you.